All right, the webinar is now broadcasting to all attendees. Hello, everybody, if you can hear us.
I'm sure we'll start seeing them all come.
Come on down.
They're coming in.
All right. We got 93 people starting. Awesome sauce. 121. Hello, Maryland. All right. We're expecting, we don't know.
700.
All right, 700. Come on down. We're almost up to 200. Oh, well. Hello, everybody that's joining us. I'm really glad you're here, and I am thrilled. We got 4 participants raising their hands. I'm waving back at you. We've got Stephanie, Christina, and Lynette, who all know what they're doing technologically. I'm Holly, Elissa. I don't have a clue technologically, but I'm ready to talk about trauma and finding a pathway toward happiness, even in this crazy pandemic, even in this lockdown. So guys, I'm seeing 18, guys, my friends in Maryland, what does it mean that people are raising their hands? Doesn't that usually mean they want to say something? Oh, you guys are muted. That's cool.
Hi.
Hi.
We'll take a look. I think they're shouting out. I'll look through the Q&A in the chat and see.
Queen's wave to everybody. Hello, everybody. Hi. That's so awesome. And I've got my clock ready. We're at 2 minutes to go. And we've got 255 folk. That's awesome. Hello, Maryland. Welcome. Welcome from the cities. Welcome from the north. And welcome from the south. Welcome all you guys who are near the ocean. Welcome all you guys who are right in Baltimore, where I used to live. I lived on Druid Hill Park Road, right near the zoo. That was fascinating. And I used to go to a place in Baltimore called, what was it called? It was the market that had been there forever, the indoor live market in Baltimore. I love that. I loved it. It was on a slope, mostly Italian families that had been there for years. Lexington Market in Baltimore. All right, guys, I'm seeing we have 1 minute to go, and I'm just so glad you guys are here. We got 286 people coming, which means we'll just keep having people coming as we're starting. That's all good. Hi, folk that are waving. Hello. I'm the only one with my mic on. No, Christina's got hers on too, I think.
I got my mic on. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you're here. I can see the numbers are just climbing, so people are logging on now.
Yeah,
we're so excited to be able to join together virtually. We might be social distancing, but that cannot stop our social solidarity and being here for each other. And we're so happy to host Holly today, and we're so excited. So we're gonna just we're gonna get started here in 1 minute, and we'll allow some time for people to come in.
Okay, guys, and I have an important question. Is there lipstick on my teeth?
Nope, looks great.
These are all important
All good.
questions, right? Thank you, honey. These are important. All right, I've got 1 o'clock and I'm ready to roll. Hello, everybody. We got 335, 339 more coming. Let's roll.
Okay, hello, everybody. Welcome to those of you that are just joining us. I'm Christina Lopez. I am president of MDAEYC. I'm an early childhood educator, a mother, and a survivor of the COVID-19 crisis. I'm claiming it right now. And I want to thank you all for being here and showing up for each other. That's what we can do right now. We're so excited to host Holly today, that she agreed to be here with us, and we know you're in for a treat. I just have a few little technical updates on how this is going to run today. We are going to have the chat. The chat is sort of like where we put in our amens and a yes and a, just those, please share those thoughts that come to you as Holly brings us on this journey. And we also have the Q&A. In the Q&A, if you have a question for Holly, you can put those questions in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring the Q&A box. I have, and I want to introduce some other members of the Maryland AYC board and staff. I have Stephanie Schaefer here. So can you unmute Stephanie and say hello?
Yes. Hello, everybody. We're so glad you're here.
Hey, Stephanie.
Hello.
And we also have Lynette Russell, our treasurer. Stephanie is our program coordinator. I didn't mention that, extraordinaire.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Lynette as well will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see everyone coming in and the numbers are rising. This is exciting.
This is Lynette. I'm glad you're here.
Okay, so that's how this is going to go. We're going to have pauses and we'll interject those questions with Holly. This is a family and we're just going to throw it out there, and Holly's ready. We're all ready. We're so excited. So I want to welcome Holly and just tell you a little bit about this amazing woman here with those glowing lights behind her. Holly is a best-selling and award-winning author. She's an international keynote. She's been all over the world sharing her stories of hope and experience with trauma and her survival skills. She has been the Attorney General and Assistant Attorney General in Maine, faculty at the University of Maine, Augusta, and Wheelock College. Now she's part of Boston University and also was in Singapore. She calls herself a recovering attorney, so she'll tell you more about that. She just released an amazing book that is what we're sharing today is sort of based on that book. It's called Happiness is Running Through the Streets to Find You, Translating Trauma's Harsh Legacy into Healing. And we are so grateful that she's here to talk about hope and not terror, especially during this time. So welcome, Holly.
Hello, everybody in Maryland and beyond, if other people are joining us, and Christina and Stephanie and Lynette, thank you so much for making this possible. I'm really delighted to be with you, and I want to share something that I just learned this week from my friend. She's a co-author with me of a book called Learning from the Bumps in the Road, Dr. Deborah Renetta Sullivan. And what she said this week made real sense to me. She said, stop calling it social distancing. Our field is all about social emotional intelligence. We don't want to socially distance, we want to physically distance. So that works for me, that we may be at a big physical distance. I'm way up in New England, west central Massachusetts, and yet this is a time for us to come together, connect, realize we're going through the same mess, and talk about what happens and what choices we can make when we go through trauma. And yeah, as Christina said, I'm a recovering attorney, you know, and why? Because I got it that if I wanted to make a difference, I wasn't going to do that as an attorney anywhere near as much as if I became an early childhood educator. Because I have seen over and over again, you touch a child's life so that child begins to unfold to become who she's meant to be. And that touches me so much, particularly touches me because I was a child that looked like she came from the perfect family. If you read my book, you'll see that when you compile the advanced degrees my sisters and I have, I mean, we're so off the charts, it's kind of embarrassing. And people would say, well, she's from the perfect family. They all got all these degrees. Well, guess what? Nuh-uh. We got degrees because we didn't feel like we were worth much of anything. But when we got some sort of external approval and an affirmation, that helped. So yeah, Christina's right. I'm going to talk with you about my experience as a survivor. And I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which I have been getting help with for much of my life. I'm also, though, going to put that in the context of what it's like for each one of us to be locked down, what it's like for each one of us to not be able to be with our daughters as they're giving birth, to be with our family members when they're sick in the hospital. The very first day of this trauma, of the lockdown, my Uncle Arthur, Arturo Bruno, died. And if you can raise your hand if you've had somebody in your family that's passed during this crisis. Yeah, look, it's so many of us. Heartache. Thank you. Oh my God, there's so many of us. It's heartache. I wanted, as you probably did, I wanted to be there at Arthur's funeral. I wanted to hug my Aunt Conchetta. And guess what? I almost went. That's how crazy this pandemic can make us. Now, ready for this? Raise your hand if you felt kind of crazy. Oh, everybody's going, yeah, honey. Yes, it's natural to feel crazy. It is so natural because we can't, it feels like we can't rely on our instincts. And that's scary because relying upon my instinct is how I know that I'm doing the true thing, the right thing. So here's the truth. I was all set, man. I got my, I checked out American Airlines. I could tell what my itinerary was going to be. I was all set to fly in. And I went to bed that night, the night before I was supposed to fly in. And I said, all right, to my divine source, I said, okay, God, help me out here. Next morning, I woke up and I just knew. I just knew I couldn't go. I knew I was living in a new reality. And much as my heart wanted to be there with my aunt and my cousins and my, all this big Sicilian family, because Arthur was the last of the immigrant family and is a very tight family, and broke my heart, but I couldn't go. I couldn't go, and so I grieved alone. And those of you who've lost someone, you know it feels almost impossible. And that's what I want to talk with you about. Hope in the midst of impossibility. Hope in the midst of a pandemic. When things are crazy, how do I find sanity? When my heart is broken, how do I open it to love? That's the question. And that is honestly, that's the gift that trauma has given us. It sounds crazy. It is counterintuitive. It doesn't fit natural beliefs. But the truth is, you have found, and you know this, you have found 3 things about yourself during this pandemic already. You found strengths. Now again, wave at me, woot, woot, if you have found a strength that came to the fore. Yeah, honey, we're getting up above 100 already. Strengths have come out of you, and those are you. That's your true self. Okay, now you ready for another question? How many of you have found something about yourself that you do not like? I'm putting 2 hands up here, honey. Oh, yeah. The morning that I woke up and I didn't want to get out of bed, and I thought, oh, I see you, honey. This happens, right? The stuff we don't like about ourselves shows up, and there's no escape from it. I woke up one morning and I started feeling really guilty, like, oh, look at yourself. You want to go back to bed. You're lazy. You're, come on. And that critical voice inside of myself started eating me alive. And I just said, because I've learned to do this over the years, I just said, good morning. I call my critical parent voice Adolf, because he's really, really atrocious to me. And I said, Adolf, I hear you, but no thanks. No thanks. I have a right to be tired today. So I went from calling myself lazy and feeling shamed and down to saying, all right, this is a tough spot we're all in, and I have a right to be tired. I have a right to be tired. And I don't need to put myself down, even though that's what trauma taught me to do. Traumatized children blame themselves for the abuse their parents are giving them. And I think my heart has helped me understand that. Traumatized children, we blame ourselves because at least that way we can understand why it's going on. I could not comprehend why my father would be beating me. I couldn't comprehend why he would come into my room at night and do unspeakable things to me sexually. I couldn't comprehend that. However, if I could blame myself and say, I must have done something wrong, and if I can only be better, if I can only be a better kid, if I can only please him more, then this wouldn't happen. And so what I came to see is that it's a natural response for children, and the research backs this up. We blame ourselves during trauma because that at least gives us understanding. And then the sad thing is it gives us a false sense of control. If I can blame myself for the trauma, for the troubles around me, then I feel I've got some control. I can fix things. Like I can maybe fix my dad and make him happy. No, I can't do that. But there is always someone I can work on. That's the new serenity prayer. You might have heard it. The new serenity prayer, you ready for this? Grant me the serenity, God, grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that one is me. Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense to you. Yes. Oh my God.
Holly, I have my thumbs way up, and I have one, as we get started right now, Jennifer has reached out and shared that she's really having a difficult time with panic and panic attacks. Are we going to talk about that today?
Jennifer, thank you. Let's just hit that right now, girlfriend. Panic is, this is powerful research, and I have had panic attacks almost all my life, except for the last, say, 5 years. Because of my trauma recovery. Here's the truth. Panic is that veil that comes down over our bodies just before we're about to really, like we're afraid we're really going to freak out. So panic comes in. It's a part of our brain that freezes during trauma, and it tells us to run for the hills, or it tells us to hide out, or it tells us to freeze like deer in the headlight, or it tells us just get out of where you are. This is scary. So trust me, if you're having a panic attack, you are not alone. In fact, anybody else wave? Yes. We're already up to 50 people that have had panic attacks. Panic attacks are scary because I feel like I'm going to choke to death. They're scary because I feel like I'm losing my mind. They're scary because I feel like I'm not going to survive. Here's the truth. Panic attacks will come, but we can also feel them coming and prevent them. And that's what I have tried to learn. That's what I have learned to do. When I'm feeling anxious, and that has happened hugely, when I have felt anxious, I pick up my iPhone and I text a dear friend and I say, Ted, I'm scared to death right now. I'm sitting alone in my house. I don't have anybody to give me a hug. I need a hug badly. Can you connect with me? And Ted comes right on and he says, I'm scared too. So we start laughing about, okay, how can we help each other? But you know what? And we're going to talk about this. There are 4 ways to jump out of that mode that puts us into panic attacks. And it gives us hope. And so if you have a panic attack, before, as you feel it coming on, because you can feel, I mean, sometimes they just jump us, right? But they also, I can tell when I'm getting anxious. And the first thing I do is I reach out to somebody else and I say, I'm so anxious right now. And the truth is the talking cure works by talking with somebody else. And this is what Lynette, Stephanie, and Christina and I talked about beforehand. It's about connecting. When we feel disconnected, we start to feel crazy. When I feel connected, I can start to breathe, okay? The other thing I know I can do when I feel a panic attack coming on is I can put myself out of doors. Even in the rain, we have hail in New England. Even in that, I'll put on my raincoat, I will go out of doors and I will find me a flower. And I will get close to that flower. And I will hang out with that flower. Now, I don't care if that sounds crazy. I'm putting myself right next to life, and I'm putting myself right next to creation. So if you feel panic, trust yourself. It's natural. And if the feeling of coming close to a panic attack scares the living daylights out of you, I'm with you 800%. So if you can, take at least those 2 steps. 1, reach out to somebody and tell them you're scared, this is happening. I'll tell you the truth, I've got an 84-year-old therapist who has talked me down a number of times when I've been saying, oh, I can't breathe. But the fact that I'm connecting with someone allows me to breathe. So thank you so much for sharing that question and stick with us, okay? Let's look now at what we can do to prevent panic attacks, and in a deeper way, even though panic attacks are huge, post-traumatic stress disorder comes from trauma. It's post, it's after the trauma, right? So I have post-traumatic stress disorder from a childhood of trauma, which means that I have now, what do you call it? Not multiple, complex. Yeah, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, but here's the truth. One event, getting caught in a fire in a building, being in a car accident, watching buildings fall on people you love. That one event is trauma, and we can have post-traumatic stress after that trauma. And you all have read the MDAEYC study. You know how painfully accurate it is to say that those of us with trauma don't live as long. We end up with addictions. We end up with illnesses like heart disease and cancer. And yet here I am, 74. What the H am I doing alive? Well, because there's hope. And I'm not talking like Pollyanna. Pollyanna works for some people. She doesn't work for me because I know the reality of terror. I know the reality of panic. I know the reality of a fist in my face. And I know the reality of blacking out. And I know the reality of dissociating from my body. You probably see this, little children do this all the time. They're so scared where they are. They're so unsafe that we just leave. I did that so much of my childhood. I just left. When things were impossible, I'd first try to become invisible. You probably have children in your classroom who've learned to be invisible. Have you ever taken a head count and been surprised to see that Milagros is in the classroom? Well, she's there, but she has learned to protect herself by being invisible. I learned that too. When things would go violent in my household, I would sneak into the living room before anybody could catch me, hide behind a chair and get so small and I would just disappear. I would just disappear like nobody could see me. These are all natural responses to trauma. My hope for us today, guys, is that we, and I can do this yes, great, is that we, even during a pandemic, can find practical, loving, accessible, doable human ways to prevent the panic attacks and to learn, and not only that, I'm going to push it, to be our best selves. Trauma can bring out our best selves, not just our worst selves. And trauma can surprise us. I believe you when you raised your hand and said a strength has come out of you. I believe that. And I'm going to check my time here. Yeah, I want to say one other, no, I'm going to say one other thing this trauma has done. How many of you have felt grief and sadness? Like a knife through your heart. Oh yeah, that's so many of us. What I felt that when my uncle died. But here's the gift of this trauma. I remembered another pandemic I had been in, and if you have someone in your family or a dear friend or partner who went through the AIDS pandemic, we lost people. That sadness came up because it wasn't as it wasn't as possible then to grieve publicly. Now, thank God it is. But here's what came up. When I was 5 years old and had just finished first grade, I was playing that summer of 1949 with, 50, with Claire, my good friend Claire Greenfield. She was my opposite, long blonde hair, bright blue eyes. I'm brown as a berry. I'm the ethnic kid in the hood. And there's Claire, and we're playing, and we're buddies, and we're having a good time. And the next day I was playing with my other buddies, Janie and Billy. And the next day I wanted to play with Claire again. And I said, I want to go down to Claire's. And my mother said, no, you can't. She didn't say anything else. And that was a problem of my mother that I had to adapt to. But here's what happened. The next day I asked again, and no, I couldn't go. I couldn't go to Claire's. And then I heard from my friends, Janie and Billy, that Claire was in the hospital. And then I heard that Claire had polio. And then I wanted to see Claire and talk with her, and I couldn't. And then Claire died. And because you all weren't around then, we didn't have books to read to children going through trauma about when you lost your best friend or you lost your grandma. We didn't have any of that. And my parents did not have the ability to talk with me. They just shut down. So what did I do? I went illegally. I sneaked behind all the buildings, went down the alleyways until I could get to the local church where I thought Claire might be. Because I heard that's where people went when they died. They had funerals. And I put stones so I could look through the church window and the door, and it was all dark inside. And that was the end of it. I just never got to say goodbye to Claire. So what happened during this pandemic? I started feeling Claire. I started remembering my dear friend Claire that died, that I never said goodbye to. And here's the gift of this pandemic. I started crying. And that wasn't always easy for me. I was taught not to cry. I also started writing in my journal, "Dear Claire, I am so sorry you missed so much. You were so fun. And then I said it, I feel guilty that I survived and you didn't. Now, folk, there is the crazy gift in the midst of this pandemic. I'm alone, I'm sad, I'm remembering that I didn't say goodbye to Claire, and all of a sudden I get it. I have survivor's guilt. We're going to come out of this, a lot of us, with survivor's guilt. We got through it. Others didn't. And survivor's guilt can take away our joy. What I did with Claire when I was grieving her is I just cried. I told her how sorry I was. And then I said, I am grateful. Claire, I'm grateful for you. You were a really good friend to me when my family was troubled. And I hope your soul traveled well. And today I feel better. I feel better. So there's the wacky gift in the midst of a pandemic. I feel a panic attack coming. I reach out for help and I get it. Please do that yourself. I feel deep sadness, like depressed, despairing sadness. I start writing about it. I talk with somebody about it and I discover what's going on deeper, and then I can grieve. Grieving is something many of us were taught we couldn't do. We got to do it because this is such a sad time. If you have to just cry, God bless you, just cry. I've done it. You know what? Yes, go ahead, sweetheart.
Hi, this is Christina. We have amazing chat going on, and this is just proof that we needed this space for each other. Some things that have come up, and I know you're ready to jump into your slides here, but how do we deal with the guilt of privilege? We know that there was a wonderful conversation in the chat about, we're all in this storm, but we're traveling in different boats. Some of us are more equipped than others, or, you could say it the other way, that you're all in a boat, but the storm looks different. And so I know that you might be addressing these in the future slides, but I thought that was a very poignant question that many of us are feeling.
Look, what I've learned as a trauma survivor is to feel whatever I'm feeling and to not run from it. What I was taught by trauma was to run for the hills, get out of there. This feeling will overwhelm me. I thought if I started to tell my story, that a tsunami of fear, terror, anger, shame, pain, guilt would overtake me. When I run from my feeling, it only makes the feeling a ghost that's going to come back and haunt me. And so if I feel guilty, I've got reason to feel guilty. Turns out I'm part Black, but I wasn't raised that way. So many secrets were kept in my life that I looked white. I had white privilege. I still do have white privilege. And so let's just hit that question. We are all in the same boat, but some of us have got real deals. Some of us can get tested right away. I don't know who that is unless you're in the White House, but some of us can do that. The rest of us, some people don't get tested and they die because they don't get tested. There's a lot of outrage, and if you feel outrage, feel it, What I learned to do with the feeling of guilt is to not run from it, but to turn around and walk right into it and just accept what what is it telling me? It's telling me that I have privilege. And what am I going to do with that privilege? Am I just going to take care of myself, or am I going to ask myself, what's one thing I can do today that will reach out and make things better? And I am doing that every day. And I know you are doing that every day. I mean, if you're teachers and you contact your families, God, that is such a gift to them. How many of you have done that? Yes. God, that is a lifeline. You're a lifeline. If I could only, I'm going to just tell you that my teacher, Michael Gonta, was the first person that ever said to me that I had a future. He said to me I was special, and I never forgot that moment. What you are, because people were telling me I was worthless, that I'm not going to repeat what I was told, but I will tell you that that one choice you have is to translate guilt into action. And if you feel bad because you were given privilege, share what you got, honey, and reach out and share that from your heart. Not from one up, which is what some of us were taught, but from straight out from your heart. That's what does it. That's what does it. These webinars that I'm doing, my friend out in Ohio, who's the head of the Ohio AEYC, she said, Holly, do you remember the time, and she described this time when she had invited me out because the whole state, everybody was going crazy because funding had been cut off to early childhood. Does that sound familiar? Funding had been cut off. And she said, I don't know the answer. I'm the head of AEYC. I don't know the answer. Nobody knows the answer, but we got a lot of smart people in our profession, a lot of caring people. Let's get us all together. And Holly, would you facilitate? I said, oh, honey, that would be such a privilege. We got together just like we're doing right now virtually, but we got physically together. And together we created steps. We could take things that we could do so we weren't alone. And things got better. We didn't resolve the lack of funding, but we helped each other find ways we could. This is early childhood every day. You guys make something out of nothing. You entered this profession taking the vow of poverty. You know that. I mean, we are rich. My mother used to say there's a reward in heaven. Well, guess what? We are so soulfully rich by having chosen this profession. Now, you ask yourself, as I ask myself, how do I put my daughter through college when I'm not making enough money? Yeah, nice choice, Holly. We find a way. I went to work for the post office. I'm telling you the truth. I didn't have enough money to pay my daughter's tuition. I had said to her, Lily, you get to go to school where you get in and where you want to go. I didn't put it that way. I said, girl, you go where you want to go and we'll make it happen. Single mom, I was. And my husband was paying his part, but I had to pay my part. I went to work for the post office and I became like a Rosie the Riveter. Really, I was pushing around these big things and I got pretty strong there for the month of December. I didn't have Christmas and I didn't have Hanukkah, but you know what? I made the money. So what I'm trying to say here is feel the guilt and then put it to the side and say, okay, how can I give back? Not from a condescending standpoint, but from the fact that my heart knows what it's like to break. And I have something I can give and offer, even if it's just listening. Do you know that a traumatized child simply needs to be seen and heard first before she can even learn? Children feel like they don't exist. When you see them and hear them, just by loving on them makes a huge difference. Now, guys, if you're okay, keep coming up with these questions. We could do this all afternoon and I would adore it, but I want to offer you some practical pointers, and yeah, they're research-based, that will help you claim your true voice and your power to make a difference even when you're feeling guilty. And it's about hope. And hope is an acronym, how do you say that? An acronym for having humor. God forbid you lose your sense of humor. Originality, be true to yourself, warts and all. P stands for perspective. Climb up to the balcony or put your head up and look out the window or take yourself outside, or look at a picture of a baby, whatever you got to do to get perspective, that also gives us hope. And the last thing is emotional honesty. So hope is humor, originality, perspective, and emotional honesty. And let's get right down into why we need that. Look at this, guys. This is what happens to our brains. Silly me. What happens to our brains when trauma strikes. And if you have panic attacks, if you dissociate, if you have felt like, oh my God, I can't handle anything anymore. I have felt that a number of times, that, you know, and again, wave at me if you felt overwhelmed. Like, I can't handle this anymore. That's my scary thing, because that means I'm headed toward a panic attack. When that happens, I call upon hope. And the first thing I do is to try to recall my sense of humor. I'm gonna give you another example, guys. I live alone, all right? And I live at the edge of a woods, which is beautiful. And one night it was dark and rainy and yucky. And I was feeling kind of sad. I was locked down, and I lit candles. That helps. I lit some candles. They make the light soft and beautiful. And I looked on the slider to my back door. What? I said, ew, that looks like the biggest spider I have ever seen, stuck on my back door. Now, I respect spiders, but I don't like them near me. I don't like them on me. I respect them. If they get on me, I was like, eh! But I respect them at a distance, okay? So here's the thing. I saw this thing and I thought, it's a spider. I'm going to go see what it's doing there. It was on the outside. That I knew. That was safe. But it was still big, and it was right smack in the middle of the window. And so I took my iPhone with me. I don't know if you can see that because of there it is, my iPhone. Took it with me so I could take a picture, and that would give me a little bit of boundary and distance. I got up close, a little bit quivery. Candlelight is sweet, but it's not giving me clarity. Turn the light on, and what is this? Oh, jeez. It's a peeper. Now, how many of you guys know what a peeper is? A peeper, thank you. Peepers are those beautiful little tree frogs that make all that, they sing to each other. You know, I can't make their sound. But I saw this peeper, and he was so funny looking, and he had his 4 digits with like suction cups at the end of them, and that's how he was attached to my glass door, and he's got these big old eyes, and he's looking at me. And honey, you know, I'm a little bit crazy. That's okay. What did I do in that moment? Jeremiah was a bullfrog, was a good friend of mine. Never understood a word he said, but I sure like to drink his wine. Joy to the world. And I'm singing. I am singing with this peeper that's looking at me with these eyes. And I don't give a sweet dippy, because I'm singing, I'm laughing, and I sang the whole thing. I've sang that song a lot since then. I even looked up the lyrics so I'd get them right. And guess what? I was scared. I was alone. It was dark. It was rainy. I don't like spiders. They frighten me, that they might bite or sting. And oh my God. And that's how I responded. And so here's the deal, guys. Humor, connection, taking a risk to be safe in an unusual way, like reaching out to somebody and just telling them the truth. I am scared to death. This all helps. And let's see why it helps. If you look at the brain, look at the right-hand side, my friends. See that brain? It's mostly white. It's white because the blood has drained out of it. The blood drains out of it when we are faced with trauma. Trauma makes us so afraid that our brain goes into its autonomic mode of primitive response, and that primitive response is, get me out of here, or let me freeze, nobody can see me, or fight. I mean, if you saw a child getting hurt, even though you're not you're more a peacemaker than a fighter, you would get right in there and you would get that child out of danger, right? My son, I love him dearly, and he had several developmental delays, and one of the things I had to teach myself was to not keep intervening for Nick. I wasn't helping by saving. I had to learn how to support so that he would develop, and he's done really well with that. He's the one that taught me, by the way, when he was not able to do something because he had a lot of challenges with fine motor control and would be sitting on the floor doing something and he just couldn't do it, and he would just look at me. Now, I was taught to beat myself up. You can't do that. What's wrong with you? But Nick would look at me and he would say, "Silly me, Mama." So I don't know if you noticed, but when I messed up the slides before, I said, "Silly me." That's what trauma teaches us. It's to learn from everybody in a humbling way. We do things because we're not alone. My son was loved, so loved, and so adored that he could say, "Silly me, Mama," and teach his mama something. When he got older, I said, "Thank you, Nick. You taught me a life lesson." Okay, look, guys, see what happens with the brain on the right-hand side. That's us under pandemic. That's us under terror. That's us under fear. All we can do is survive. That's the survivor's brain. That is the fear-based brain, and fear-based brain means we can't think straight. So what we want to do is reset the brain, which we can do through humor, through being true to ourselves, by being emotionally honest, and by getting perspective. Those all reset the brain. And when we reset the brain, the blood starts to flow again. All that red blood that's doing exactly what it's meant to do in the brain on the left-hand side, that's the hope-based brain. That's the brain where we can take action rather than be actors. That's a crucial distinction during trauma. If I feel like a victim, I'm powerless. If I feel like a victim, I'm hopeless. When, I'm not gonna say if, when I feel like a victim, I get doubly scared because I can't protect myself. When I am able to picture this brain and just say, "Sweetheart, sweetheart, of course you're scared to death. Of course you feel inadequate. Just take one step," because that's all it takes to move from being fear-based to being hope-based. And sometimes my most primitive step is to say, "Help me. I'm a mess." Jeez, I'm a mess. Please do something. Help me out. Whatever divine there is, help me, because I can't do this. And help always comes. Maybe I don't feel it, but it always comes. So we need to get our brains from this panic state of being a reactor and being fear-based into returning to remember that there is hope and that we can help and that we can ask for people to help us. And when that happens, the blood flows throughout our brain. And here's the important thing. And just if this would feel comfortable, just gently rub your forehead, because behind there is the important and most recently developed part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. You guys know this. But it's also called, behind the skull is the executive function. And no wonder it's called the executive function, because that's where we get to make executive decisions. And look, in that brain, the blood has flown to all parts of the brain so we can operate on all cylinders. It's no longer held captive. We're no longer held hostage with the blood in our primitive autonomic amygdala. We are instead able to use the rest of us. And look what happens. Once we can get ourselves out of the panic attack, the PTSDs coming my way, that I got to get out of here, I'm going to die. And I have felt that so many times in my life. I'm going to die. I have been in cities and felt so alone that I have to get out of the building and go out and find a tree. And honey, I can hug a tree. I mean, for real, I need something green. I was in Macau, China, speaking, and it was all these high-rise buildings. And I couldn't imagine how children could exist without green space to go to. And I talked with the principal there, and he said, "We have on the top floor, the 14th floor of this school." School was like preschool all the way up to high school. "We have a play area." And I said, "Okay, That's what they've got. Well, me, I got gardens, I got flowers, because I know that heals me. You know what heals you. For some of us, it's singing. That switches us immediately into the rest of our brain if we can sing. I just heard today a child who sang the minute he started talking. My son, first diagnosis ADHD, my son ran. I watched his face, such a beautiful child. They all are, but my son, gorgeous, Korean, stick up black hair, and he had this smile to die for and live for, actually. And his smile, just the minute he got it, he was going to walk, he ran. And the smile was like, I'm powerful now. And he was. So look, I want you guys to just look at this image one last time and get it, that what we're trying to do is spread our energy into a healing way. And what trauma is trying to do is to get us to shut down our energy and to turn into a little embryo to survive. We can't survive that way. Or if we survive, we will come out of this with post-trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder. So take a look at this, guys. Why on earth would I have chosen a diamond? I could have chosen a gem like a ruby or a sapphire. I love those. They're beautiful. I chose a diamond because you know how diamonds are made? They are made from being bashed around and squished under the earth. And the more they're squished, the more they get clear. I have discovered in my life, when something traumatizes me, yeah, first I get scared to death. But then I realize it's teaching me something. It's teaching me something. And so let's look at this, guys. Trauma is, you know what I'm going to ask Ms. Ms. Stephanie, could you read this to us, honey? Because I can't see the whole thing. Could you just unmute yourself, Stephanie, and read?
Yes, yes, I can. Trauma is my most rigorous guide. Trauma is my unchosen but compelling pathway to a life of meaning, an uplifting appreciation of beauty, and a deeply anchored conviction to make the world better for every child.
Thank you. That's straight out of my book. Whoop, you probably can't see. Well, there it is flashing around, but that's it. It's from my book when I realized I could either mourn the rest of my life for the stuff that I had seen that no child should see or feel, or I could say, there are no accidents. There's probably something to this that I can live through and grow through and discover beauty in. And guess what? I can look at a flower and stay there for an hour. That's something that trauma did for me. I only had a moment of safety sometimes. And when I had that moment of safety, I would adore whatever was around me. Yeah. So look, here's something else that Carrie Fisher, you guys remember Carrie Fisher with Princess Leia, right? Buns on her head. She said, look at that. Read it with me, okay? Take your broken heart and do what? Turn it into art. And what is that saying about trauma? It says when we're going through this pandemic and we're heartbroken and we have cause and we feel out of control and we have cause, take that pain and translate it into something of beauty. And you know how to do that with children. If you just do one small thing for a child, it'll make that child giggle. If you, for example, get in your car and drive your car and tell a family, I'm going to meet you on the sunny side, I'm going to meet you on the opposite side of the street, and we're going to sing our favorite songs. And then you drive up, and they're on the other side, and you're sending air hugs to the babies, and all of a sudden, you start doing a tootie-ta, a tootie-ta, a tootie-ta-ta, a tootie-ta, tootie-ta, a tootie-ta-ta, thumbs up, elbows back, elbows back. You know, I don't give a sweet bippy if people on the street are going, who's this crazy lady? I don't care, because what am I doing? I'm connecting, and I'm taking my broken heart and turning it into art. Raise your hand if you know someone who has reached out to families like this. Now that's bringing me to tears, just thinking of how you guys can do this. So you feel a panic attack coming on, take that broken heart, turn it into art, take action and give back. And the research on the brain says, when I do something kind for another person, it gives me joy. Now, I'm not talking about turning into a raving codependent where I forget myself. I'm good at that one too. But, yeah, I know codependency big in our profession, honey. We take care of everybody else and leave ourselves until last. Well, congratulations to you, because you're here right now for you, and that is a very big deal. That's a very big deal, especially those of you that are homeschooling. Especially for those of you that are like, get me out of here. So let's keep going, guys. I love that. Thank you, Carrie Fisher. And she had panic attacks. Do you know that? She was on an airplane once. She was married to Andre Previn. I know all this because I studied panic attacks because I tried to understand myself, right? And my mother. Anyway, she was on an airplane, and you know how they say, basically, speak now or forever hold your peace. They say, if you get out, if you're not going to Milwaukee, you better get out. She ran to the front of the plane screaming because she was having panic attacks. I got it. I understand that. So let's look at what we can do, guys. I love this. This is from a priest that went through a hard time. Read it with me, please. It's and by the way, at the top is an article that MDAEYC can post on its website. It's from a child care exchange when babies were getting put in cages. Exchange called me and said, would you write an article? We just need the truth. Tell the truth. And my belief is to tell the truth with love. Just telling the truth won't be heard. If I do it with love, acknowledging the person who's listening, then we can connect. Then I can hear her truth. So look what this guy said. Read it with me, right? He said, this is a priest, that this is no longer a priest, John O'Donohue, and he talking about fear controlling his life or hope. He said, read with me, guys. May I have the courage today to postpone my dream no longer, but do at last what I came here for and waste my heart on fear no more. How do I move from fear into hope? The first thing is humor. And humor resets our brain. And I'm going to just share with you, even laughter. If you were to take a pencil, I had a colleague at the University of Maine, used to do this with his students, and he'd say, look, here's the clock. You can watch it tick, old-fashioned clock. And here's a clean yellow pencil. You remember those old pencils made of wood and they had yellow paint? I want you to put this in your mouth for 1 minute, but before you do that, you don't have to do it if you don't want to, but it'll show you something scientific if you do. Would you just, and that was back in the day when people were writing in notebooks, he said, would you just write down how you're feeling? And the students are writing down stuff like, I'm bored, get me out of here, can't wait to see my girlfriend tonight, all this stuff. He wrote it down. Okay, then he said, okay, 1 minute, I'll talk, you guys just keep this pencil in your mouth. And they did that for 1 minute, and they watched the clock go, and guess what? You're smiling. When you have a pencil in your mouth, and it sounds hokey and fake, but if these smile muscles are activated for a minute, that releases endorphins. So humor, laughter, smiling kicks the brain, not in a violent way, but kicks it up a notch to the executive function. There was the guy, Norman Cousins, who got cancer, and he was going through all this, the yucky treatment people go through for cancer. It's awful, scary, painful, yuck, but it's necessary. He went through that, but then he said, I know I feel better when I laugh. So he got all these Marx Brother movies, and I think he got Lucille Ball, I Love Lucy stuff, and he watched those all day long. And he laughed until he almost wet his pants. Now, he didn't say that in his book, but that's what it sounded like. And he healed. Oh my God. So notice that humor is healing. And as Stuart Brown said, play is the brain's jungle gym. If you inside your houses on lockdown can play like I did with that silly little frog who didn't think I was crazy, thought I was nice, maybe, I don't know. But look, I'm going to read this to you like a commercial. So maybe a smile will come to your face. It's also written by a neuroscientist, and you know, sometimes they can be wicked boring. So play, here's the truth about humor helping our brain. Play selectively stimulates nerve within the amygdala, the emotions of the passive and the dorsal, and if you get an erection that lasts for more than 4 hours, you need to see help right away. Of course, you can't get to a doctor now, but you got to call. All right. So let's go to the next slide. I love it. Look at this. Stuart Brown, great guy, wrote Play for humans, for adults, not just kids. Read this with me, when we're able to find our sense of play, when people are able to find their sense of play in their work, they become truly powerful figures. So if you feel something horrible coming on, like depression, play, be silly, make faces, whatever you got to do, you're going to make the kids around you laugh. How about the kid in you? How about the child in you? That child deserves to laugh. So let's go on. The second part of being hopeful, reclaiming hope when in dark times, is originality. And I love me some Queen Latifah. Look what she says. Be bold. Be brave enough to be your true self. Now, Dr. Carl Jung echoed in his own way what Queen Latifah had the wisdom to say. He said, we all come to the earth with a true self. It's who we are when we're not playing a role. And that's where our gifts lie. If I'm being true to myself, I have a sense of humor. I think I came to the earth with a sense of humor. It's a survivor's tactic for sure, but I was the only one in my family that could laugh. I was the family clown. I'm glad because it lightened up some terrible times, okay? What's one of your strengths that you came with? And you could say you just knew how to cook. Brilliant. During the lockdown, brilliant. Okay? Or maybe you have from the get-go had a sense of wonder. Maybe music touches your heart so much that even if you don't have a voice, like I don't necessarily have a voice, as my husband told me, you don't have a solo voice. He was my husband, no longer. Anyway, I love this. If I'm true to myself, warts and all, then I can be helpful to myself and other people because I'm not wasting energy on faking it and trying to be somebody else. Look, here's the bottom line, and if we run out of time, this is probably a very important slide. It comes from the Playmakers, the Life is Good Foundation. They do a lot of work with teachers on trauma. I've worked with them and not work with them. I've had the delight of learning from them. That's more accurate. They say that during trauma, to maintain our sense of originality, to be ourselves, we have to have 3 things. Well, 4. Look at the last one. Hope. We can't quit on hope, even when we feel like it's crazy. Reach out and ask somebody else and saying, I feel hopeless right now. Are you feeling hopeful about anything? I said this to my friend Luis Hernandez, if you know him. We were sitting and it was another troubling time, and I said, Luis, do you have hope? And he looked at me in his matter-of-fact way, and he said, what else have we got? Choose hope. And look at the other things we need to have inside ourselves and for children as well. The freedom to choose. What am I talking about? They call it inner control. It's feeling like I have the ability to act, not react. I had a sister, God bless her. She died 4 years ago. Horrible, haunting disease. She had chronic progressive MS, got worse and worse, body crumpled, and then affected her brain. This is one of my sisters with a PhD and a law degree, and it broke my heart every time I would sit beside her, but I sat beside her because that's what I could do. And sang to her hymns because she was religious, and I told her stories because she couldn't remember anything of our childhood. And why am I telling you about Karen? Because even when she was at the end of her life and couldn't do anything else, she would pray. She chose to pray. I'm grateful if I was on her list because God knows I needed it. I needed it. So yeah, I can tell myself, I don't have any choices. I'm a victim to all this, but I remember my sister, she was gone, mostly gone, but she could pray. Yeah, to that. So look, inner control. So here are the 4 things we need to maintain our holiness and our wholeness and our hope. One is to remember that we got to face this. We can't pretend. Like the hope is, Frost got it. The best way out is through. I can't pretend I'm not locked down. I can't pretend I'm not 74. I can't pretend I wasn't hospitalized when I was teaching in Singapore for RSV. And I know what a respiratory illness is like. It was scary. But I reached out and I was on lockdown. I was in quarantine, but I befriended all these doctors. And my favorite doctor used to come by every morning because he called me his favorite cup of coffee. He said, some patients are really arrogant. He says, you know, we just talk about the truth. So there it is. Queen Latifah got it right. Be true to yourself. Who you are is enough, even if people told you the opposite. Your gifts are enough. And so you still have choices, even if your life is really limited. Remember my sister Karen. Joy. You have inside you what we see in children every day. It's that wonderful awe. Things are awesome. If you just want to, here's what I do. Sometimes when I'm feeling down, I look out my window and here's what I say to the divine. I say, okay, God, show me something I haven't seen before, please. I do this when I'm driving too. And every time I do that, might not happen right away, but something will catch my attention. Like yesterday, I'm talking with a woman in Cleveland, and I look out and this big, beautiful hawk puffs up its feathers right just for me to see. So guys, remember awe, curiosity. The opposite of curiosity is judgment. Now we need judgment where we don't need to judge ourselves because we judge ourselves harshly. And that wastes time and energy. If instead I can look at myself and say, yeah, I'm a 74-year-old woman. Yeah, I've got arthritis. Yeah, and I've got this opportunity. What can I do? Well, you know what? After this, I'm going online with the UK. Oh my God, we got 2 minutes. I'm gonna read my book. I've never done that before. So connection. Here's the other thing, guys. Hold one another in safety and in love. When you feel like everything's fallen out, and it will feel that way, reach out to somebody else that loves you. That will make all the difference. And read this with me, guys. We're not going to get through the slides at all. But look, Fred Rogers nailed it. Nobody else can live the life you live. And even though I'm not perfect, no human being is perfect, we always have the chance to bring what's unique about us to life. And guys, I'm going to jump ahead here. I wish I could do all this stuff. Perspective, I can do it. I can do it. Perspective, Eleanor Roosevelt. Grew up with an alcoholic uncle who used to try to break into her room at night. She needed perspective, Eleanor. She said, you gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you stop to look fear in the face. You must do the thing you think you cannot do. What I've learned as a survivor is when I start getting scared, I don't run from the feeling. I sit there and I let the fear come in, and if I feel panicked, I reach out. But if I start to feel sad, I let the tears come. If I'm angry, I let the anger come because I'm turning around to face that uncomfortableness, and there's always something behind it. Even though if I don't figure out it was Claire Greenfield that I was crying for, I can remember that tears heal me. Okay, now I love this. Look what Rumi said about the same thing, and we are just about out of time. He said, everything that looks like a tragedy, like a trauma, the dark thought, the shame, the evil, the malice, when they come to our door, meet them and don't just open the door and welcome them, but laugh. Press the button. Laugh, invite them in. Why? Be grateful for whatever comes into my life because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. You are learning so much about yourself, about life through this pandemic because it's a spiritual retreat. I mean, it's a hellish spiritual retreat, but it gives us the opportunity. Now, guys, maybe if we get together again, I'll go through this, but the bottom line here is trauma can put us into a state of fear where we become, our self-esteem goes down, we become victims, we can't resolve anything, or trauma can boot us up into a state of taking action. I can either be a reactor or an actor. And when I become an actor and just choose one thing, including I'm going to pray, then the problem falls into perspective. I can see it. I become hope-based, and I get self-confidence. And so every traumatizing feeling that I have, like going into denial, that's really natural. You know, you've done it. I've done it. It's not really happening. It's not as bad as it is. Bull. What can I do about denial? I can face it. I can say, yeah, I'm scared right now. I'm scared to death. If I'm isolating, we're being taught to isolate. No, 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 reach out. And when I'm isolating, blaming myself or feeling shame, that's when I contact a friend and I say, guys, I'm just really feeling down right now. Okay, can you tell me something you like about me? I'm not ashamed to do that anymore. Guilt, when I'm feeling guilty, own it. What's my part? Yeah, I was raised white. I got a lot of privilege. Own that, and then open my heart and say, what have I got as a human being that I can offer? And sometimes it means just listening to somebody else from the heart. Anger, you have a right to be angry. That gives us clarity, not to smack somebody upside the head, but to accept what's going on. And once I accept things, then I can problem solve. And look, guys, the last part of hope is emotional clarity. It's what I'm talking about here. Feelings come to us. Feelings are data. They can control us, or I can say to my feeling, yeah, I'm scared right now. You're overwhelming me. I got to take action. Take action from that emotional clarity. Get what you need. Help yourself, okay? And go to a child's story. If you've got children around, you can read this, but I wasn't ever read stories as a kid. I can see their power. Look, Petit Prince, right? Little Prince, it's only with the heart that one can see rightly. What's essential is invisible to the eye. Think of your favorite children's story. Think of it. It's always about courage. It's about hope. It's about love. It's about acceptance. And look, Fred Rogers, perfect. Let's end with this. And many times throughout their lives, children feel the world has turned topsy-turvy. It's not our ever-present smile that's going to help them feel secure. What's going to help them feel secure? It's knowing that love can hold many feelings, including sadness, including anger, including fear, and that they can count on the people they love to be with them until the world turns right side up again. The scary story, Humpty Dumpty, what happened? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. What an awful message for kids. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. That's the message I got as a child who came from trauma, that I was so broken, I could never heal. Guess what? Hope heals. My friend, spiritual friend, Emily Dickinson, people laughed at her, made fun of her because she was so different. She put her pain, she took her broken heart and turned it into poetry. She said, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the song without words and never stops at all. Hope is what we need to have. And guys, children see us this way, right? We see us this way. Yeah, we see us this way, like, oh my God. But children, look, find hope in children's stories. You're braver than you think and stronger than you can imagine. Thank you, Christopher Robin. Now you're going to feel like this. I'm going to feel like this again. There's no place to go but where we got to go. But we can do it with humor. We can do it with hope. And by the way, that little girl right there, that was 3-year-old me. And I'm sitting beside my beautiful mother who was psychotic. Sometimes she was there, often she wasn't. See that hand? That's a little girl at 3, not quite even 3, looking at the photographer saying, get me out of here. I can't, it's not safe for me here. She was a baby, she knew to say that. Going through trauma helps us become the best we can be. I emerged a person who's in love with life because of the trauma. It helps us embrace our difficulties, not run with them. Trauma helps us love our perfectly imperfect self. How many of you have been wearing pajamas? Or like, I got sweats. This is my silk top, honey, but I got my sweats on. I mean, we're imperfect. I don't shower every day. I'm cutting my own hair, as you can tell. You know what? Connect to joy, connect to beauty, and connect to one another, and connect to the beauty in yourself. And now, guys, let's end with this. What I've been talking about is my own story. You don't have to buy this at all, but if you're interested, go to exchangepress.com and tell them Holly sent you. Give them the code happiness and you'll get a discount on the book. And sometimes they put it at a greater discount too if you buy it in bulk. But this is not about selling the book. This is about saying to you as we come to an ending, thank you for making a difference. Thank you for choosing a profession where you touch children's souls. I can tell you as a child that needed you so much that when you saw me and said I wasn't as sick and I wasn't as broken and I wasn't as hopeless as I was being taught I was, because shame controls children. I was shamed into control and shamed into hating myself. I don't hate myself today. In fact, we got what we got, right? And it's a gift. It's a painful gift, but we got it. So my friends at Maryland AEYC, I apologize for going over. Anything you want to, thanks everybody, and God love you for what you're doing. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up hope. And my friends, Christina, anything you want to add in?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for this gift of hope. Thank you for making space for us, for being honest, and just creating a space for us to feel and acknowledge those feelings so that we can move forward. The chat has been amazing. Thank you all for being here. What you all are going through is so different, and yet we share a common thread in the words that you've said. And so we just hope that you'll respond to the survey that we're sending out. Maryland AEYC really is a community of professionals, you know, for the profession, and we're here for each other. We want to create that space. So please, you know, let us know what you want more of, what we can do. We'll stay in touch with Holly and see what we could do, and maybe another event. I know you had to move kind of quick there at the end.
But I have, I'll be glad to come back. I have other webinars, and they're all about acknowledging what a gifted group we are. And that's not arrogant, but we've got gifts right now that the world needs so badly. And trauma can bring out the absolute best in us. And it's putting our profession at the forefront, because we're the ones that teach people how to share, how to accept each other, and the power of unconditional love.
Right, and there was some questions there, but I think you've addressed them. That, you know, how do we help children? How do we help people that aren't ready for this, that aren't ready to feel? And I think you answered that. Is just do the work and model that, and people are going to connect with that, and they're going to want some of what you have. And when the time's right, they're going to come and ask. So we're so grateful that you got to share what you have with us. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm headed to England virtually to do a reading. And then tonight I'm doing a similar thing for Massachusetts AEYC. Tune in at 7, and maybe I'll do it all differently. Stephanie, Christina, Lynette, you guys are awesome sauce. Thank you so much. And everybody that was with us, God bless you. Don't forget hope, or I'll come haunt you. Bye, guys.